Well, half of them don't have anything on.
Right, because all those ones I took out, why if I carry that around? I'm not going to get a map. You're going to get maps for us? Huh? You're trying to get maps for us?
Yes, sir. They don't pay taxes and they don't.
Hazardous committee.
Yes, sir.
What do these all mean?
I just thought it would be.
Be all right.
A lot of people know.
Larry.
Larry.
Township, section,
When you were out the engineer school. I asked them, Larry,
Oh, I'm teaching.
sometime this summer, will I take the county board on the road? They let us have a county board meeting there.
See, I'm making you sign one.
Everything else and everything that they do, and I've already asked them.
It was sitting here, so I know. Maybe that was already.
Here's the.
You think I thought
I'm,
we had to go through a whole.
I haven't changed for a couple weeks.
I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah, the Richford Town chairman don't
Let
like
me think now, I think maybe.
Here's the page before it.
Well, they don't even give us credit when they put it in the damn paper.
It's fairly
And
blank.
here's the page before that one.
I read those really fast.
I did too. Here's the page before that one.
I thought I could get it
Here's
done
the other page.
a couple weeks ago, but then my doctor said he wasn't.
How you doing, Jerry?
Page.
Barry,
Trees died for this.
last official meeting, eh?
This is it?
Did you buy,
What?
did you bring,
Did you read your
sausage and that?
I didn't know if I was
Not those pages.
Well, yeah.
You made your own pages?
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, in there? This is the page before. Before 79 sheets.
I don't know how to write.
Graph on there that tells me what.
Oh, and top, every top of every single one of them.
How you doing? He was all, I couldn't
And
get
top
hold
of
of
every
him.
single black sheet is supposed to put in here.
Oh, because
No, I'm not happy.
for years, my dad has said, oh, there's reason to cut down this tree. That it's been like, it's like on the edge of his driveway. And
I didn't take them out, I just showed them there right now.
When all the leaves and the branches started springing, like,
This is 150.
Okay, this thing keeps pushing.
So that would be Morris.
for years. So I go to his house, this tree, big giant maple next to it, all whacked off, like, and then he goes, come on, I'm down one more too, because it's also dead. There's just like dead trees all
Yeah,
over
that's
his
the fires
front
that
yard.
they
So
had.
yeah, he's been trying to clean up that mess.
2005 to
Now it's
2014.
This comes from East Central.
has been taken down.
I think it's essentials, isn't it? All the rest of it is.
Is this part of your mitigation?
Yes.
Do you want me to?
That's my question.
Doesn't say what they are, but it says the name of them.
So it looks like it's by, it looks like it's by landowner, right?
That's where I figured it.
So,
But here's White Pine Fire.
okay.
What landowner is that?
Have fields.
Here's a Doro Fire. I understand the Doro, but there should be something across the top. I understand this is the date. And this is the acreage, it's here. And here's your section quarters, and everything, that's the section. But what's this? Is this the township?
Next time.
But all there is
Looks like
19,
it could be a
they're all
township.
19, not all 19s and 18s, 19s, and 20s. That's all they are.
Okay.
We didn't have any our way then.
Do you want me to see?
Shouldn't be
if
too
I
long
can
shouldn't be too long a tour tomorrow, huh?
ask if he needed to be here tonight, and I said,
Well,
well, we
we're
have
All I
a
want is,
question.
all I want is something that
Aurora,
goes
so-
across the top.
That'll be a little ride then.
So I
Yeah,
know,
we rode a lot.
so I know for my fire department,
Nothing.
Okay.
which ones they fought.
Okay.
Oh,
I mean,
that's the way to do it
you
then.
know, I'm on Playsippy and Red Granite. And
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't have another line.
yeah, there should be a line.
But I mean, you
Still roll your own e-cigarettes?
Yeah, I do. Those left-handed ones.
How long was that?
Donna says the sheriff is here to protect us in the front row. He's not here tonight.
Really scary. That would probably make me look. Didn't stop John
I know.
Wayne. He lost one of his out, he kept going, kept puffing.
Oh, Infernal Rebel.
really.
I'm trying to get Donna and Pat to convince them.
If you have an active sex life, that shit clears right up.
You want to change places then once in a while?
Well, that's great. I think we should.
Be all in
I
one
already
line?
told her I'm gonna move. All right.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I so move.
Motion by Weddy,
Second.
second by Heisey. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approval of the minutes of the February 16, 2016 monthly meeting.
So move.
Motion by Wado,
Second.
second by Barry Mastrocola. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, public comments. Bill Van Dongen is here to address the board. Very nice gentleman. He's in my district.
Wise beyond his years.
He does.
In our district, is that what it is? Thanks, Barry, I appreciate that. I'm just the chair of the Land Planning Commission for the county, so I'm just here for the amendments that we're going through for the land plan, for the county land plan. As you know, it's a bottom-up approach that we use so that most of the changes you see, the land use map changes and that sort of stuff, come from the towns or municipalities that are in the county. And then we also added in the different plans that are going to be developed or have been developed. The all hazard plan, and the lakes are now in the process of developing their own lake management plan. And those are to be accepted, not, we use the terminology accepted, not adopted, because the lake plans cannot tell the county what to do, but they need to be, the county needs to be cognizant of their existence. So if you have any questions on these things, I'd be glad to answer the questions. If not, I'll sit down and get out of the way. Done?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No unfinished business. We'll start with reports and presentations. And our first presentation is going to be Wisconsin Department of Revenue equalization process. And our presenters are Pat Grabner, Dave Gibson, and Gary Martell. They are property assessment specialists. And I hope I didn't mispronounce anyone here. Thank you.
Sorry, they don't make these big enough. But Dave is going to pass out some handouts. We thought that would be most effective instead of doing a PowerPoint. And then if anybody in the audience would like to hope we have enough extras. We do. Excellent. I will also have some business cards available. I'm the property assessment specialist that will be handling that handles Waushara County. So if you have any questions for me directly, obviously feel free to give me a call. I also have our manufacturing assessment employee, Rob LaCroix. He's not here tonight, but he handles all manufacturing assessments in Waushara County. If you have any manufacturing-related assessment questions, I have some of his business cards as well, so he'll be the person you want to contact regarding any manufacturing assessments. So moving forward, I appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak with you tonight. Again, my name is Patrick Grabner. I'm with the Wisconsin Department of Revenue Equalization Bureau. I'm a property assessment specialist with the Bureau. Also speaking tonight will be Gary Martell, also a property assessment specialist out of Green Bay. Dave will not be speaking. He's handing out the paperwork, and he's kind of our advanced, if there's any questions that are super advanced that Gary and I can't handle, that's why Dave's here. So our presentation tonight will cover a couple things. Primarily, we're going to discuss what's the difference between assessed values and equalized values. Also, what else does equalization do? What do we do as a bureau? Why is it important? That's basically what we're going to cover tonight, and answer any questions that you might have when we're done. We've been allotted about 15 minutes, so Gary's going to get us started here. And like I said, we'll be a quick 15 minutes, and assuming there's not that many questions, we'll get on. You can get on with your evening. So here's Gary. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Okay, so we were asked here today to talk about the equalized value, but before we discuss that, it makes sense to review the assessed value so we can see how they're related. So I'll go over the assessed value. Pat, like you said, we'll go over the equalized value, and hopefully we don't have too many questions, but if we do, hopefully we got a little time at the end. So let's define the assessed value. simply put, an assessment is the value placed on a single property by the local assessor. The assessed value is what determines the portion of the local tax levy that is allocated to an individual property. That's the dollar amount you see on your tax bill. So let's take a look at a simplified example that illustrates how this works. So let's say, for instance, you have this fictional municipality where the total assessed value is $10 million. If you have a tax levy of $50,000 and there's 10 properties in town, each assessed at $1 million apiece, each one makes up 10% of the municipality, and each one would pay 10% of that tax levy, or $5,000. So as you can see, that what really matters here is the percentage of the total value that determines what your tax bill is. So what does a local tax assessor do? What are their duties? Well, there's basically 4 things. The assessor is going to determine, first of all, what property is taxable and what's exempt. Then they're going to take that taxable property and determine if it's real estate or personal property. They're going to then classify that real estate into different classifications: residential, commercial, forest, agricultural, for example. And then they're going to set that value. And more importantly, they're not going to just set a value, but they need to set a uniform value so that they maintain that equity that we saw in the previous example, where everybody's taxed fairly. So not surprisingly, not all segments of the market change at the same rate. Over time, when one or more segments change to the extent that that equity is lost, that's when it's time for the assessor to go back and revalue all the properties. So for example, the market might change differently for ranch homes versus farmhouses. Or commercial property might be changing at a different rate from residential properties. So this revaluation, while it's designed to bring the assessed values back in line with the current market, it's more important that it brings everything back in line with each other so that you have this equity. So what is the difference between the assessed value and the equalized value? Well, as I said before, the assessed value is the value placed on an individual real parcel of property or item of personal property. It's used as a basis to determine the taxes owed by an individual property owner. And these values are updated periodically. They're not updated every year. Now, if we take a look at the equalized value, that's more of an estimate of the full value of all the taxable property in a tax district. So this is used as a basis to determine the amount of the tax levy owed by a tax district for the overlying tax jurisdictions, such as the county or the school district. And these values are updated annually. So ultimately, the equalized value provides this uniformity between municipalities, whereas the assessed value provides uniformity between individual properties. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Pat Grabner so we can talk more about the equalized value.
Thank you, Gary. Just so if we're all following along, we're on page 7, just so we're all on the same page. Equalized value, what are equalized value? What's the definition of equalized value? It's simply the estimate of total taxable value of all in real personal property in each taxation district. It's important to emphasize taxation district, not municipality. It excludes, exempt property and managed forest land. It includes, obviously, your residential, commercial, all your market classes. It also includes agricultural, undeveloped, and agricultural forest, which are non-market classes. Agriculture is still valued and equalized as a use value. Undeveloped land and agricultural forest is valued at 50% of market value as well. They're 50% classes, similar to how the assessor would handle those classes of property. Equalized values are certified annually as of August 15th. And the data we use to establish that August 15th value, it's the same as the assessor. The values are based as of January 1st of each year. So in this case, as of January 1st, 2016, we're going to be using data from January 1st, 2015 through December 31st, 2015. page 8, what is the purpose of equalized values? They provide a uniform basis to administer the property tax system. It allows for fairness and equity between municipalities. Again, municipalities do not all assess at 100% of market value. So this is a means to equally distribute levies of overlying, again, taxing jurisdictions. Municipal boundaries do not equal school district boundaries or county boundaries or technical college boundaries. Equalized values also do not extend to individual properties, as Gary alluded to. We're encompassing the whole municipality with equalized value. What is the entire value of the municipality? How is that changing one year to the next? Individual parcel property tax fairness is dependent on the municipal assessment roll and your local assessment, not equalized value. All right, and the purpose of equalized value. A lot of purposes. Apportionment is the biggest one. It's, again, apportionment of the property tax levy for counties, school districts, the technical college, state reforestation, also state aids, allocations, debt limit calculations, municipal tax rate comparability. Measuring assessment compliance is also a big one. 7005 is basically the statute relating, again, to assessment compliance. How far away our assessments to the market is 7005. Basically, 100% is spot on assessments, equalized value, spot on. If assessments are lighter than what the assessed value, you're going to have a ratio at, let's say 90%, would be 10% less than what the market is. The 7005 compliance is basically 90 to 110% would be in compliance. Below 90% out of compliance, or above 110% would be out of compliance. Equalized values are also used to equate manufacturing property assessments and also used for levy limit calculations. Basically, levy limit calculations are from your net new construction, which is from the municipal assessment report, which I'll get into in a minute. So next page, page 10, we have a pie chart. In this pie chart, basically it represents 5 municipalities within one school district. Basically, what we want to look at here is what your percent equalized value is for your municipality in comparison to the total district total. Excuse me. For example, we'll look at the city of Badger, which is 9% of the total equalized value of the district of 100%. Basically, that means that if the tax levy for that school district was $1 million, the city of Badger will need to collect $90,000 or 9% of $1 million. So, okay. Moving forward here. What do we need to establish equalized values? What's the process? Probably the biggest piece of information that we have is the municipal assessment report. This is provided to us by the local assessors. It indicates the change in assessed values for basically all classes of property within that municipality. It includes, most importantly, new construction, demolitions. Has there been any properties raised and a decrease in value? Have there been annexations, exemptions, changes in personal property value, etc. Also, equalized values. Sometimes with the municipal assessment report, those are due on, was it the second Monday of May each year? And that's the report we use to establish our equalized value. But in some cases, if the assessment roll is not ready by the second Monday in June, you need to postpone the border review to a later date because the assessments aren't ready. So a little later on down the line, when the assessments are ready, the border review takes place, then the assessor has to file their final report. But again, we used that estimated report from the second Monday of June to establish the equalized values. But let's say now this final report comes in and there's $1 million more new construction than what was reported in June. Okay, we can't pick that up for this particular year because our values were based on that first report in June. So we're going to have to correct that $1 million change the following year with the 7057 adjustment. So it's important to realize that the equalized value each year incorporates 7057 adjustments or corrections from the prior year. Equalized value also includes economic adjustments. The percent change, what's the market doing? You know, are the sales showing an increase or are sales showing the decrease? We got to follow, you know, what the market is showing, and that's what we do or attempt to follow with our economic changes. And then lastly, manufacturing property. Manufacturing property is added into the equalized value. Manufacturing is always valued at 100% already, so it's just simply a matter of, you know, applying those values into the total equalized value. There is a link if you want to, you know, when you're back home or in front of a computer and you want to click on that link that's provided here, that'll show you, you know, all the changes in equalized value for every municipality in the state by category, where the change is taking place. So it's a good report to look at and familiarize yourself with. It'll show you how much net new construction was there, and I believe it goes back at least 5 years, maybe more. So, all right, moving on, page 12. How do we get accurate equalized value? We need good communication back and forth with the local assessor and our district office. The assessor needs to be very thorough and reviewing their sales. As Gary mentioned, you know, we're using valid real estate sales. We want to make sure we're looking at arm's length transactions, and we're looking at this, you know, our studies are the same as theirs, so it's important that we're looking at the same data to establish our ratios. It's also important to look at various reports. Exempt computer reports is a big one. We want to make sure that there's not big changes happening in the exempt computer reporting. If we see a large percentage change, we're going to contact the assessor. It would even be great if the assessor was proactive and contacts us and say, I'm seeing about a 15 or 20% increase or decrease in the exempt computers this year. Just want to give you a heads up on that. That would be great. Then, you know that we don't have to contact the assessor and are you sure you want to be reporting this much or this little in your exempt computers? Also, again, I already elaborated with the MAR, or the Municipal Assessment Report. If there's a revaluation going on and there's a big shift in acreage in that particular year, they're shifting a lot of property out of forest and into the undeveloped class. Forest is 100% market value assessment. If the assessor's shifting a lot of land into undeveloped or swamp, the value is going to go down. And we follow at equalization the acres that the assessor holds. And it would be good for us to know that that's happening, you know, when the assessor submits that estimated report or final report that second Monday in June, not in October. If it's in October and that big change takes place, there's going to be a big 70-57 adjustment for the next year because, you know, that change was not reported early on. So, and then lastly, you know, I just kind of commented on revaluations, but, you know, just if there's big value changes, obviously we want to know what's going on and just making sure we're reading from the same sheet of music. So just moving down the list here, review and comment on DOR preliminary information. What does this mean? Sales information is provided to us by the local assessors in mid-March. We want to make sure that we're looking at, again, the same sheet of music, if you will. We want to be looking at the same sales. We want to be, you know, analyzing the same sales ratios and et cetera. Equalized values is another preliminary report that we will publish. That's published it's published August 1st every year, and that gives the municipality an opportunity to look at their equalized values, make sure they agree with it. If they see there's an issue or a problem or something that needs correcting, they can still contact us, you know, those 15 days prior to the August 15th when the final values are posted. You know, we can maybe get that corrected if the municipality see there's something wrong there. So that's very important. And again, I already commented on the exempt computer values. You know, we want to make sure that there's not any big swings going on. So good communication back and forth is necessary. All right. Timely and accurate filings with the DOR. Again, that's sales information. We want to make sure the assessor is reporting all the valid sales to us. The exempt there's 3 reports due on the second Monday of June. That's the exempt computer report, the municipal assessment report, and the TID assessment report, all due second Monday in June. So, okay. All right. state and local finance. Equalization is a division of state and local finance. There's 4 bureaus under the state and local finance. Obviously, we're equalization. There's 5 district offices in Eau Claire, Green Bay, Madison, Milwaukee, and Wausau. Manufacturing and telco, that's another bureau, state and local finance. There's 4 district offices, one in Madison, Milwaukee, Eau Claire, and Green Bay. What does the manufacturing office do? Basically, it's the property valuation of manufacturing is the biggest thing they do. A couple other things that they have to value are telecommunications, pipelines, airlines, railroads, and power companies, valued using gross receipts. So, and then the 2 other bureaus of the state and local finance, that would be Office of Technical and Assessment Services. That office is located in Madison. They maintain the Wisconsin Property Assessment Manual, and they also oversee assessment certification, training, and any assessor complaints that might arise. So if you have a property owner having an issue with one of the assessors, that phone call wouldn't go to me. That would go down to the Office of Technical and Assessment Services in Madison. And actually, you probably want to call me. I'll give you the direct phone number for the person you want to contact down there. I'd simply be forwarding that on to you. So, and then the last bureau I want to mention real quick is Local Government Services out of Madison. They deal with more of the finances at the local municipal level. That includes shared revenue, levy limits, financial reports, lottery and first dollar credits. They also deal with statement of assessments and statement of taxes. So again, if you have any financial questions within your municipality, Local Government Services would be the bureau you'd want to reach. If you cannot find their number, feel free to contact me. Again, my cards are here. Feel free to take them, pass them on to people who might want to contact me. I'd be happy to talk to you. And then the last 2 pages are just resources that you should feel free to use. These are all located on our website, www.dor.com, I believe, or .gov, excuse me. Feel free to scroll around that site, get familiarized with it. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of reports, a lot of common questions for all topics, equalized value, assessed value, chargebacks, agricultural use value, there's all types. I mean, all the information you need is likely there. If you can't find something, obviously use me as a resource, but I would recommend trying to get familiar with our website and what we have to offer. We spent a lot of time on getting this website very user-friendly, so please access it. So with that pretty much concludes our presentation. I'm sure you have some questions, so feel free to fire away. Nothing. Yes, Larry.
The Department of Revenue is doing a assessment review in Waushara County this year, or
Correct.
started it actually last year already.
Correct.
Could you share with the group just a little bit what exactly you're doing?
Sure. That actually wasn't in the presentation, so that's a great question. We're doing a field review this year, and what that really means is we're doing a random sampling of, it's basically, we're appraising every municipality. We're taking, for the townships, we're taking 50 residential properties, usually 25 sales if there are that many sales, and 25 samples. And we're basically establishing our estimate of market value for those properties. And then we're just comparing, okay, how far apart are these estimates of market value from our field review from what we were holding for fair market value last year. And we're also doing that for Class 2 commercial. We don't have as many commercial properties. Usually most municipalities have about 10 that we'll look at for commercial, and then maybe another 20 or so Class 7 or agricultural farm site we'll look at. So basically we're just going out appraising the properties and seeing how close our numbers are by going out and physically doing appraisals. And they're not, I shouldn't say, they're thorough appraisals, but we don't have the same authority as the local assessor. We can't physically go to properties, knock on doors, get into properties. We're not an assessment entity. Basically, we request from the local assessor the property record cards for the properties we are field reviewing, and then we simply do a drive-by on the road, access Google Earth or a multiple listing system, whatever information is available to help confirm the accuracy, of those record cards, and then use the square footage and the information from those record cards to assist us in establishing a value. So that's kind of a quick run of the mill, but does that answer the question? And again, that's for every municipality in Waushara County, every township, every village, every city. So.
Did you get your questions answered about why those two townships had dropped in assessment so significantly? Did you guys talk about that, or?
Yes, we did.
Got your answers? Can you share that with the rest of us? Why?
The question was, I believe it was the town of Leon and the town of Mount Morris. Mount Morris had a big jump in equalized value last year, while the town of Leon saw a decrease in value. Both municipalities had about the same amount of sales. I believe it was about 20 and 22 sales in each municipality. But what we analyze when we do our economics is, what's happening from one year to the next ratio-wise. How are the sales from, what was the ratio from one year to the ratio to the next year? And the two townships basically contradicted each other. One municipality had 20 sales showing a big increase. The other one showed a big decrease. And we had about 2% of the total property sell, which is a lot. 2% doesn't sound like a lot, but as soon as you get to 2% of the total assessed value of property selling, that's a significant amount. And the stats were pretty clear that, one was going up and one was going down. And that's the information I used to establish those values. Interestingly enough, if you look at a 4 or a 5 year trend, both municipalities were very similar. I think one was like at a -4%, the other one was at a -7% over the last 5 years. But Mount Morris, I think being more of a lake recreational municipality, there's more value there. I think the values kind of bottomed out over the decrease starting in 2008, and they showed a little rebound. And most of the municipalities, if you look at all the townships in Waushara County, and not just those two, showed an increase last year. I don't remember exactly what percent showed an increase, but the vast majority did show an increase, and a few did still see a decrease. And those primarily were the ones that didn't have a lot of lake country. So that's kind of just a quick synopsis of what happened. I mean, just kind of a broad brush, explaining it here, but I hope that was sufficient. So, yeah. Correct. We have maintenance on the side of the cars. We've actually been working since last summer. So I don't know if any of you got any phone calls that we were out and about. I know I actually lost 2 magnets on the side of the road, so I hope nobody's out using those magnets. But of course, that's something I would do. But every once in a while, especially when we're out there on a nice day, we do take pictures of the properties while we're out there. Obviously, as soon as the camera pops up, obviously that can raise some concerns. But we do send letters out to the municipal board, the chairman, indicating we're going to be in the municipality and we're going to be starting shortly. We don't give exact time frames because sometimes these kind of drag on over the course of the year. And we also send a letter out to the sheriff, the county sheriff, that will be out there, and that indicates all of our vehicles that we will be using. So it doesn't seem like we ruffled too many feathers so far, and we're probably about 90% done with our fielding already. So that's a good thing. So you're welcome.
Another question.
Sure.
So I'm starting to read references to dark stores or zombie stores.
Okay.
Can you explain a little bit what's going on with that whole issue and how this Department of Revenue will approach that?
That's a pretty advanced question.
I know.
There has been a lot of media reporting on dark stores. I think the best way to answer that, we don't deal with individual properties. Like I said, that's what the assessor does. I think it's important for the assessor to relay that information to us. If they feel there's a big drop in value due to a store being dark, which is basically what's happening. It's very difficult to establish a value because it's a change in use of that property. As not a real easy change. You know, there's not a lot of tenants to go in and occupy that space. So it's important for the assessor to basically notify, okay, you know, I'm looking at changing this value, and what is the reason you're changing it? Is it due to an obsolescence? You know, is it economic obsolescence? If it is, we're going to apply that to our equalized value, which is important. You know, I don't think there's a lot of concern with that in Washera County, but, you know, for the bigger municipalities, especially Madison, Milwaukee, maybe even Appleton, like Manitowoc County is another county that I do. City of Manitowoc, the old mall has pretty much all gone dark. So, and the assessor there was very good in communicating with me and letting me know that, you know, I lowered the value here and I lowered it here because of this, and she provided me all this information on, you know, how she came up with that value, you know, and we followed that with equalized value. So I hope that was sufficient as well. So anybody else? Audience? Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for coming.
Right now we're going to have e-cigarettes, what you need to know. Sandy Bernier, Tobacco Control Coordinator for 5 counties for tobacco-free living. And what is your last name and pronounce, please?
Bernier. Yeah, you did fine. And this is just right for me. So, as she said, I am the coordinator for 5 counties for tobacco-free living. I'm housed out of the Fond du Lac County Health Department, and those 5 counties are Green Lake, Waushara, Marquette, Washington, and Fond du Lac County. So we serve as the lead agency for tobacco prevention for this multi-jurisdictional coalition. Next slide. And these are the areas that I'm going to cover, and I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity, because the first thing I'll say is I think it's a really confusing time for parents who want to protect their children from nicotine addiction, and I think it's also a confusing time for smokers who want to quit. So hopefully I'm going to address some of those issues today. So the first generation of e-cigarettes are what you're going to see on the top, and this is what I basically saw back in 2009. I was actually in the mall setting up a display for the Great American Smokeout, and I came past one of those kiosks. So you see the cartridge looks like a regular, the whole top one looks like a regular cigarette. So that's the cartridge. The vaporizer is actually where that vapor and that liquid would come through, and then the battery is what heats that up. And then the one that's on the red, which is called the vape pen, that's more of a tank style e-cigarette. And those are the kind that you can refill yourself, whereas the top one would come pre-filled. And you can also get refillable cartridges or fill them yourself. And then the other one looks like a bigger battery. That's called a mod. So you can actually get different parts of these devices, and you can basically customize your own. And based on the size of the battery, it will heat up that vapor to higher levels and increase some of those chemicals that would be put out into the air. And this is just a few of those. So not only you'll hear e-cigarette, but we also have e-cigars, e-pipe, e-hookahs, and vape pens and hookah pens. And those hookah pens on the right-hand side, just out of curiosity, I went on to Amazon to see if I could get one, and it asked me if I was 18, and I said yes. And for $7, I was able to get a Red Bull flavored hookah pen sent to me through the mail. And it said it had 500 puffs on it. So these are a huge variety, and when you talk to kids about e-cigarettes, they don't use the term e-cigarettes. They'll use vape sticks, vape pens, because if you ask them, do you use an e-cigarette, they'll say no. We'll say, do you use a vape pen or a hookah pen? And they'll say, well, yeah, I use that. And it is illegal in the state of Wisconsin to sell these products to minors. However, they're also being sold over the internet, and they're all over social media. And they're not being regulated in any way, shape, or form. So the products themselves, meaning the device is not regulated, nor any of the liquid nicotine. And this is what we call an e-juice. This is the power wall. And any flavor you want, you can get in your liquid nicotine. There's over 7,000 flavors including gummy bear and cotton candy. So, it's, like I said, it's a little bit of a confusing time because I'm sure everyone knows someone who's using these and saying, you know, and some of them are very passionate and say, well, it's worked for me, I've cut down. Well, there's a difference between quitting and switching. And so this is what it looks like. And any vape shop does not need a tobacco retail license. So if you go to your gas station or you go to your grocery store and they sell regular cigarettes or they sell little cigars or smokeless tobacco, they need a tobacco retail license. Any of these vape shops can open up anywhere they want, and they do not need a retail license. And again, they can open up online, and there's plenty of them online. So, and that's just another of the premium flavors. And some will also mix their own. They'll actually get the liquid nicotine, the flavoring, and mix it their own. And there's no quality control whatsoever. And there's no tamper-proof requirement for these bottles. So I don't have a slide in here, but there was a 300% increase in calls to the Poison Center. Because if it smells like cotton candy, it must taste like cotton candy. And children have actually ingested that. So if you know someone using them, keep it locked up, keep it away from children. And 75% of the flavors, now you heard about nicotine. We know nicotine is a poison. It's not safe by itself, but diacetyl is in the flavoring, and there was a study done years ago where you had individuals working in popcorn factories who were inhaling that diacetyl. And some of these labels will say they don't contain it, but there was a study done, and there's a slide about that, and they actually tested some of these flavored bottles and found higher levels of diacetyl in there. And so it causes some major lung damage. Now, diacetyl was approved in small amounts for flavoring, like in your coffee or your butter, to be ingested. It was never approved to be inhaled by the FDA. So even if it didn't have large amounts of nicotine, this is a huge public health issue. And they're not regulated at all, again, like I said. So if I wanted to set up shop, open up my own vape shop, I could order my liquid nicotine, I could order my flavoring, I could mix them myself, I could store them the way I wanted to store them. So, you know, like when you go into a restaurant, you know, they have to keep food at a certain temperature, there's quality control things. There's absolutely nothing here. And it's more than just water vapor. So, you know, if you know there's a 300% increase in calls to the Poison Center, you know there's diacetyl in there. You know, they've found formaldehyde. They've found about 10 different carcinogens, not the same as a cigarette, but it certainly isn't just water vapor in there. And I would encourage you, if you can, to even go to the FDA website /tobacco, and there is adverse event reports in there from people who have been exposed to that and have had various different allergic reactions to it. So, and this is basically the industry. Welcome back. So either you can take that a couple different ways. Well, you couldn't smoke inside, but you can use these inside, or you really don't have to quit. So it's kind of promoting using them indoors, and we'll talk a little bit later about some of the local city ordinances that have prohibited them using them indoors. And again, welcome back. And this really doesn't meet our standard for clean indoor air. In the state of Wisconsin, when we went smoke-free, it was clean, safe air for everyone. And actually, the city of Fond du Lac went before the state, and that was the standard. So I think there's a little confusion about that when people say, well, it's just water vapor. Well, that's not what they're finding when they do the research. And people who don't, you know, even with the secondhand smoke issue, everybody thought lung cancer, but it was also heart attacks, because that secondhand smoke will make your platelets hot. We don't know that much about what's all in the vapor, but we certainly know at this point it isn't just water. And so this is kind of our stance on it. E-cigarettes do not meet the standard of clean indoor air. And it really creates confusion for enforcement, because I get the reports and people call me and say, well, they can't use these, right? And they have to explain what they look like and what they are. And again, it isn't just the water vapor in there. And this is kind of probably the bigger devices that they use, and they're even having some clouding contests here where you win prizes for how far you can shoot the vapor. So, people have really complained sometimes. They've called and said, that's not just water in there because I'm out with my family and I'm eating and it looks like a fog machine. Well, actually, part of what's in there is what they actually use in a fog machine. So that's just another example. And also, they're doing a thing. They're using some of these devices to do dabbing, and that's where they take marijuana, and they get like a butane, like you would use outdoors when you cook, and they heat it up to a waxy substance, and then they put it in the device. So the other issue is it's not maybe just the liquid nicotine. Now we're getting reports of some of these things, and some of these devices, I think anything you can melt down in a spoon, you could put in some of these devices. So we're certainly worried about our youth with this, and also we're worried about what else are we being exposed to in public places. And at this point, this is what's happened with local municipalities. So several of the cities, as you can see on the top, have passed updated their smoke-free ordinance to include prohibiting the use of e-cigarettes in indoor spaces. So anywhere that you could not use a regular cigarette, you could not use an e-cigarette. And you can see Fond du Lac's up there. We went in 2014 in our city-county buildings. And it was mostly because people were coming in and using those devices while they were, getting a license, or they were even coming into the WIC department where children are. So it didn't take long for our county executive to want to do something about that. So the ones with the stars are city-county owned property, whereas if on Alaska, those are the cities. Each municipality would have to do that themselves. And this is just another, this is blue, and this is by Lorillard Tobacco Company. So this is just another thing where people are saying, well, they're really going to help people quit. But that's not what they're advertising. So, we're talking to switching. They're not really quitting. There are 65 carcinogens in a cigarette. And it is, it's a deadly addiction. But what we're seeing at this point in the research is we're not really seeing people quit. We're seeing people switching, although there are some testimonials from people who've been successful, and there will be some research and studies on these. But we haven't seen the quitting yet at the population-based level. And this is just another, the gummy bear liquid nicotine. I don't always vape, but when I do, I don't know why they had to put Santa Claus up there. I just... so then you can see some of the different flavors in there. And adults will say, I like flavors too. But what we're seeing with kids is pretty disturbing. So, and this is what we're seeing with kids. I'll let you just read that. So the most recent data from CDC said that from use of e-cigarettes tripled from 2013 to 2014, and for the first time exceeds use of regular cigarettes. High school use 4.5% in 2013 is up to 13.4% in 2014. Middle school 1.1% in 2013 to 3.9% in 2014. And these are the key points I really want to make tonight is it produces more than just water vapor, and they aren't regulated. They haven't been proven to be safe. Matter of fact, some of them have blown up because there's issues with the battery. They aren't approved to help somebody quit. That doesn't mean some people haven't used them and quit successfully, but I will tell you, not one of those e-cigarette businesses has submitted this product to the FDA to be approved as a cessation device. Not one of them. And those are the resources. And then the next slide, I say thank you. And this is our website where you can find a great deal of information, and anything that we create, any resources, any technical support that we can provide to our 5 counties, that's what we're here for. And again, I guess my last thought would be, again, it's a really difficult time for parents who want to protect their kids from nicotine addiction. It's a confusing time for people that want to quit. But at this point, we know it's not safe for our air. We know it's not safe for our kids. And if you have any questions, I'll take them at this point.
Difference with the cost to buy the e-cigarettes and regular cigarettes?
You know, they vary because the devices are also different, but I think the last time we did tobacco compliance checks, which were mandated to do by the federal government, the state of Wisconsin, I think the disposable e-cigarette was around $10 to $12. And it depends, like, how many puffs you can get out of that. But the other interesting thing, like, a bottle of liquid nicotine can go for, like, $12, and it may have 124 milligrams of nicotine. The other issue is we don't know how people are dosing themselves, because with the e-cigarette, some people just hang it around their neck, and they just basically suck on it all the time. Whereas a cigarette, you're going to put down, it's going to burn down on its own a little bit. So that's an interesting, we don't really know. I mean, there's all different kinds of prices, and some of them you can spend $100 for a kit where you put your own together. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Hi. 2015 was another busy year. As you probably know, because I came before you many times, there were a bunch of shoreline zoning changes that occurred. There's been some legislation passed since the budget bill too, and I'm going to comment on that right now because later on you're going to look at some text amendments that was my attempt to come into compliance with all of those shoreline zoning changes. I sent them to DNR the beginning of January. They require 30 days before our public hearing. They had 30 days before our public hearing, and I got a letter today that I opened up at noon that said they had 28 comments and that we shouldn't adopt them. After I talked to the guy with DNR, 13 of them were not really an issue. Once we looked at them, he recognized that they weren't an issue. 12 were really suggestions or an interpretation that he thought should be tweaked. And 3, so the remaining 3, I think there's 2 things that I really do need to look at, and 1 he needed to check into to see whether he thought it should be changed or not. So I'm going to recommend that you still approve those because there wasn't anything I could do at this late date, and I'll certainly fix those things that need to be changed next winter. We can't afford to print out new copies of ordinances every time someone wants a change and go through all that public hearing. So that's my really quick update from today. The department itself made over 1,200 field visits to various properties around the county. We did 335 sanitary system inspections, 28 on-site soil verifications, about 500 code non-compliance investigations, 70 annual travel trailer inspections, 178 landowner requested information visits, and we assigned 86 address numbers last year. Our office issued 436 land use permits, and that came out to 159 new homes or additions to homes and 243 accessory structures. This was an increase over 2014. You can see that on the chart. I wanted to point out that accessory structures do include cell towers, which the previous budget bill, not the last one, but the one before, included language that said that counties had to permit them in any zone as long as they met these minimum standards in the state code. And I'm going to warn you about this because we didn't have any for a while, and now all of a sudden we're getting a lot of inquiries. So there's probably going to be, I'm getting calls from town chairs and other people saying, can they just put it there? And it's like, well, if they meet this and this and this and this, and they probably can. Yes, they can. So just so you're aware that that's one of the things that accessory structures. Next one. IAL Limited, our building inspection company, was bought by a national company called Safe Built. We're currently looking at a new contract with this company. At this time, they're not proposing any changes or any fee increases, so it should be business as usual with just a new letterhead. There's always a few bugs to be worked out. I'm still working with them, trying to get some of the reports that we need, and to keep our municipalities informed too. But overall, it's gone really smoothly, and it's because they haven't changed a lot of their personnel, which is nice. When you're working with the same people and they know how it's worked in the past, it works out really good. They issued permits for 54 new homes, 34 commercial structures, 47 additions to homes, and 124 electrical installations or upgrades, and 53 miscellaneous permits. And fees collected in that area exceeded $117,000. That was a decrease from the year before, and the reason for that was somehow or another the year before we had a lot of commercial buildings that go in, and obviously their fees are higher when you do a commercial one, and they keep mentioning the operating engineers school was a really big project that generated a lot of income. So that income did go down in 2014. I mean, from 2014. Next one. In addition, we issued 176 sanitary permits. That equates to 58 new private on-site wastewater treatment systems and 118 replacement systems or reconnects to existing systems. As you can see, the number of replacement systems really does remain fairly steady over the years. It's those new system numbers with new construction of homes that fluctuate the most. And both of those did go up in 2015 as compared to 2014. Mandatory septic system maintenance notices last year were sent to 3,804 Waushara County owners. That resulted in 27 citations and an overall compliance rate of 99.3%. The Wisconsin Fund program benefited 2 property owners for a total of $8,952. In 2016, I expect that there will be only 1 property owner that will qualify, and that program will probably go away in the next budget, so there won't be any more of that. Last winter, we did finish our inventory, and we cataloged just under 12,000 private on-site wastewater treatment systems in Waushara County, so that 3,800 number should be fairly steady from here on out, because we need to send out notices to everybody by 2019, and we're on schedule to do that. We didn't want to send them out all at once, if you'll remember, just because we didn't want to overload all those pumpers out there either. That was going to be way too big of a glut, and it probably would have overloaded our office too. We do have online reporting now that really has helped a lot, so the really big operators can do it online. It saves them time, it saves us time. It really does help a lot, so that's been a good thing there. Next one. We changed the word to violations to investigations in our quest to be more friendly, and some of them really didn't turn out to be violations. You know, people would call and report someone and there really wasn't a violation, so it felt kind of mean to call it a violation if it wasn't one. We had 262 code noncompliance inquiries made to our office last year. 255 were brought into compliance, not probably all of the 262. You know, some of them do take more than 1 year to bring into compliance, and we still have 155 that are still pending. We're probably working with at least half of those right now to try to get those into compliance. And these range from junk vehicles to unoccupied travel trailers to failed septics, shoreline disturbances, and building without permits. Remember, if you ever have a question about what's going on in a property and you want to know if they need a permit, they got a permit, should they do that, you know, just give us a call. You don't have to give us your name. These are civil violations and not criminal, so your name doesn't have to appear. And we'd be happy to try to check it out for you. Non-metallic mining. There's 17 non-metallic mining sites involving approximately 211 unreclaimed or active acres at the present time. Annual inspection fees netted the department $4,000. No acres were reclaimed in 2015, but 16 acres are pending certification as being reclaimed in 2016. This is because a lot of times they do the reclamation, but they can't get the vegetation standards up to what is required in the state code. And when you do reclaim a site, you have to reslope it and then get vegetation to cover at least 70% of the ground surface. And it usually takes a little bit longer to do that. And by waiting a little bit longer, it also helps us after we have rains like today and all the frost isn't out of the ground, there could be some erosion issues, so we can make sure that we catch those and then get a really good stand of vegetation before we certify them as reclaimed. So that's it for that. Technical staff also provides assistance for erosion control, stormwater management, and revegetation of shorelines. In 2015, staff helped 92 landowners with projects like these on their property. 20 on-site visits were made to individual properties, and 8 individual plans were either developed or reviewed and approved by staff. And these are photos from sites that had their shorelines restored in Waushara County over the last several years. The Lakes Grant project is now in phase 3. It's the lake management planning stage that was mentioned earlier. The department, along with UW-Stevens Point, UW Extension, and DNR, are hosting a series of 4 meetings for each lake group in the county. Planning began in October of 2013 and will continue through this year. At the end of this year, we will be done with this project. Over 30 lakes groups have already met or started to meet to develop or update their lake management plans with the assistance from lakefront property owners, UW-Stevens Point and UW Extension, and the county LCD staff. The lake management planning has been, I think, a really big success. To date, 5 lake management plans have been approved by the DNR. That's the ultimate approval authority at the end. And 17 others have currently been submitted and are awaiting review and approval by DNR. So that means that's 22, so we must have 8 more to get done this year. Working with the Soil and Water Resource Management Program, $52,000 its state funding was secured for landowners for what they call hard practices. Hard practices include stabilized water runoff systems and manure storage facilities, as well as wetland restorations or shoreline erosion stabilization projects. An additional $15,000 was slated for nutrient management from the state for Waushara County. And there was enough interest this year that another $15,000 was transferred from Ashland County to work on nutrient management for cropland in Waushara County. And to date, a total of 34,898 acres are covered by nutrient management. One other thing that was applied for was a nutrient management farmer education grant to educate and assist farmers in writing grants for their agricultural lands. So that added another $13,000, just over $13,000 to the pot for that, and provided some training, and then it did make some stipend payments to those farmers for participating in nutrient management, and that covered 1,300 acres of that total noted before. The Water Quality Improvement Program was the program that you guys approved as a trial program for 3 years, and then after that expired, then we added that, and it was approved to have that as a line item in our Land Conservation Department budget. And it does help offset some of the decreases in state funding by providing cost share for worthy conservation projects that do not rank high enough to get those state funding dollars. We have piggybacked the funds sometimes with state dollars because they don't pay the full 70%, they'll only pay 50%. And it was used to do this grass waterway in the town of Poisippi. This waterway reduces erosion and sediment from entering the Pine River. You really can't see it very well because the one with the snow on it before it was done is from the field side, and there was a big gully that went right into the Pine River on the opposite end of that. And now they've done the grass waterway, and they've got all the rocks so that it buffers that flow and keeps that sediment out of the Pine River. So that was a project that probably wouldn't have happened if we hadn't had some county money that we could help. The other projects that the water quality money went for were windbreaks, wetland restorations, and a waste storage facility for a local mink farmer. And if you want good waste storage, it's for mink farms, trust me. Conservation Field Days. We had our 9th annual Conservation Field Days last spring. In May, we had 212 students at the 5th grade level from all the public schools, as well as private and homeschooled kids. This program has been increasingly funded by donations, and is staffed primarily by volunteers in addition to departmental staff. If you'd like to come and see this program, we're always looking for group leaders. We'd love to have you out. You can spend the day outdoors with really good kids and learn a little bit about environmental issues. Just let me know. This year's event is May 5th and 6th at Camp Lucerne. We hope it's as nice a weather as those pictures show. Another program that our office is involved with is APHIS, the Wildlife Damage Abatement and Claims Program. We contract with the USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, that's the APHIS part, to provide the wildlife damage program. Deer damage payable losses in 2015 totaled $15,650 to 7 qualified claimants for deer damaged crops. There were 12 enrollees and 8 got shooting permits, and that resulted in 73 deer harvested through the program. In order to get the money, they got to abide by all the rules, and quite often that does mean that you're going to have to shoot some deer because they just are overpopulated. When claims are high enough, in the case of some of our high-end Christmas tree plantations or with honeybee or apiary operations, APHIS will award monies for more permanent solutions because they just don't want to keep paying those damage claims all the time. And this year, a Christmas tree grower was awarded $22,677.50 to aid in putting up a permanent fence around their Christmas trees. I'm always kind of surprised that deer eat that much Christmas tree, but they do. And they have done solar electric fencing for beehives that have been hit by bears. The program also covers the deer donation program. Last year, 34 deer were donated, resulting in 1,323 pounds of ground venison being processed and distributed to the local food pantries. And we do get a small stipend for administering that program. So that's it. We really try to keep providing that high level of service to the landowners and helping them out in any way that we can and getting their permits or installing a conservation practice, whatever it is that they want to do. And if you have any questions, please give us a call or check us out on our website. We are always looking to upgrade that too. So, any questions? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Terry. Okay, next we have the Parks and Solid Waste Department Annual Report, Director Scott Schumann.
I'd like to thank the board for inviting me to give a short talk on Parks and Solid Waste Department.
Are you still going to thank them?
Yeah, wow. I didn't think I'd have to come to the county board to learn something. Vaping and zoning, all these things. Anyway, go to the next slide. Parks and Solid Waste Department consists of 3 budgets and 3 general areas of focus. Number 1 is the parks, obviously. The parks consist of 12 different properties, ranging in 12 different park properties, ranging in size from the 1-acre Curtis Lake Park to 380-acre Mount Morris Hills Park. So there's a large variation in size and in utility. We also maintain the fairgrounds, essentially for 11 months of the year. For 1 month every year, the fairgrounds is leased to the Fair Association for the fair. And then we also maintain the Bannerman hiking and snowmobile trail. The advertising and promotion budget helps us maintain the brochures that I handed out, everybody's got on their desks. Also, with that budget, we develop and maintain and print the county rec map. And we also maintain 10 Welcome to Waushara County billboards on state highways. In addition, we attend the Milwaukee Sports Show each year. That's one of Everett's babies, and we just got done with that. Came back recently, had another good show. And then we also respond to numerous requests for tourist information via telephone, email, and regular mail, as well as we maintain the parks and solid waste portion of the county website. The snowmobile budget is essentially a pass-through budget. The local snowmobile clubs maintain the trails themselves. They get landowner easements, they mow and sign the trails, they groom the trails. I act as a liaison between the state and the local clubs. The state sets the regulations and pays the bills. I typically work with the clubs if they have issues as far as landowner problems. I also audit the books, and the county cuts the checks each year. Next slide. On the solid waste side, we've got two budgets, but essentially they're both to fund the 9 county solid waste collection sites. We break out the recycle portion of it for grant purposes. But with that budget, we maintain the 9 county solid waste collection sites, which includes the comprehensive recycling program. That program is split into two: the container program, which is glass, tin, aluminum, and plastic containers, and then the paper portion, which is cardboard, newsprint, magazines, old books, those sort of things. In addition, at the sites, we recycle used motor oil and vehicle batteries. And at our office in Wautoma, we run our electronics recycling program. Next. I'd like to recognize the department staff at this time, and our staff includes Parks Foreman Dennis Urban. He's been with Waushara County for 25 years. He is the only full-time Parks Department employee for Waushara County. Part-time technician Terry Purvis, he works less than 600 hours a year, and most of those hours are spent during the summer, our busiest time, and he typically does construction maintenance projects in the parks themselves. Secretary is Sarah Naparala. She works half-time, and her time is split similar to mine between parks, solid waste, and advertising and promotion budgets. She's been with us for 3.5 years and has been a great addition. We also hire typically 3 to 4 college kids each summer to maintain parks. What they do is a lot of mowing, painting, picking up garbage, cleaning bathrooms, setting up reservations. Without that labor, it would be impossible to run the park system. Next. So the solid waste side, we have a full-time foreman. Roger Barr has been with the county for 27 years, and again, he is the only full-time employee on solid waste payroll. We've got a technician similar to Terry's job in the solid waste side is Gene Reddert, less than 600 hours. Typically, again, summer hours spent working in collection sites doing maintenance work. Sarah Naparella, secretary, again, half-time. In addition to her secretary duties, she essentially runs the day-to-day operations of the electronics recycling program at our office. We have roughly 25 site attendants and subs. If you count them all together, they work Wednesdays and Saturdays at our sites. You're probably familiar with some of them if you go to any of our sites. Hardworking group of guys. Next. So anyway, I'd like to just hit a few highlights on each one of the areas that we work in. And the first being a project that we worked with the health department. Patty Wolfile and Megan Knapp came to me, and they had access to some grant money for physical fitness and health, healthy communities. And we talked about ways to make our community more bike-friendly, and talked about the Bannerman Trail. The very far west portion of the Bannerman Trail had some areas that were very sandy and difficult to ride through. And so what we did is we took some of the grant money that Patty had, and we hired our highway department to dig these sandy areas out, firm them up with heavy breaker run, and then resurface the first half to 3/4 of a mile, run a roller down it and pack it tight. In fact, the whole 7 miles got rollered, and you know, I think the project turned out great. Well, you can see they're all smiling here, right? This is the health department gals shortly after the project was finished. So, next slide. We've been working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for, well, since 2003 on this property to do a prairie restoration. And what we do typically every year is work on eliminating both herbaceous and woody invasives, typically spotted knapweed, box elder, buckthorn, these sort of things. This year, Fish and Wildlife hired a contractor to do some mechanical removal with forestry mowing, and also some spraying, some chemical removal of herbaceous. We've got properties at Mount Morris, well, near Dennis's home along W, and then at Kuzo Lake by the old High Wheel property. Next. Yeah, this fall, this is the property next to Dennis's along W in Mount Morris. This fall we worked with Fox Valley Tech, the Wildland Fire class, burned that property for us. And the idea is to stimulate the growth of the prairie plants themselves. So they did that, well, in November. And then we're hoping that in planning to burn the Kuzo property this spring, weather permitting. Last spring, we also cooperated with Heal the Hill group. They planted a number of 500 of red and white oak in forest openings at Mount Morris. They also donated 3 large red maple, bald and burlap trees that our crews planted adjacent to the shelter house at Mount Morris. Each year, the parks crew spends a considerable amount of time working on existing trails, whether it be hiking trails, ski trails, snowshoe trails. It seems like some of the most popular things that we have going in our parks recently are the linear recreation, the trails. We're also cooperating with the WAMBA, the Waushara Area Mountain Bike Association, on a trail system at Willow Creek County Park. This is our ski trail track setter system. John Deere Gator with tracks, and TidTech drag and track setter. I think that was this winter in tracking by the overlook at Mount Morris. The largest project that we completed at the county fairgrounds this year was a maintenance project on the main bleachers, and we worked with a local painting contractor, and what we did was remove all the aluminum seat boards and footboards, scrape and sandblast the entire steel understructure, and then coat that structure with epoxy paint, and then put all the seat and footboards back and replace all hardware with stainless steel. So it was a fairly large project at the fairgrounds. And then on the solid waste side, we added a second compactor, a 3 cubic yard compactor at the Poisippi collection site. Traffic and volumes justified this purchase, and now we maintain operate and maintain 16 different units at 9 different collection sites. In 2005, we continued the electronics recycling program that was started in 2010 as a result of change in state laws. And this year we collected 32.5 tons of electronics for recycling, which included 657 television sets. Next. The largest project that we completed on the advertising and promotion side was the recreation map update. Okay, and everybody's got a copy of that. We just recently got that printing back and done, thanks to Mary and the Argus. We also want to thank Zach Newton from the administration. He did all the GIS updates, and I'm sure that he's sick of us giving him calls. Pretty tedious project, but I think it turned out well. Take a look at it and give me your opinion. And lastly, I want to recognize that this is the 50th anniversary of the Waushara County Park Commission. And over the years, the commission became the Waushara County Parks Committee, and then after that, the Waushara County Parks Development and Solid Waste Committee, and currently is the Waushara County Public Works Committee. And I don't know if anybody knows any of the people that are on this list. This was the original committee, original commission. I don't know if they're even with us yet. But I feel like we owe them a debt of gratitude for the work that they did back in 1966. And I'd also like to thank this board and every other board for supporting our programs over the years. So with that, if anybody's got any questions, I'll give it a try.
But I would like to say that I'm lucky enough when I come to my meetings to contact your done such a good job with that. I love driving by there. And of course Deb plants the flowers on the corner.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks a lot.
All right, next we'll move on to consideration of possible action on the following resolutions and ordinances.
Resolution number 3-3-16, authorizing 2 MCH grant casual LTE positions in the Public Health Department.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Ready, second by Eckstein. Do you have any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed,
Do we
same
need-
sign.
Do we need a roll call for that one?
Oh, all right,
Okay.
yes, we are.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we do need a roll call vote.
Okay, Mr. Mastercola.
Yes.
Mr. Eckstein. Mr. Weddy.
Yes.
Mrs. Plata.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Wadel.
Yes.
Mr. Rothenau. Mr. Kirschner. Mrs. Krentz. Mr. Heisey.
Yes.
Mr. Tisch.
Yes.
Okay, resolution number 4-3-16, approving the Waushara County All Hazards Mitigation Plan update.
Motion by Barry. Second by Bowedo.
I did want to, Russ has some questions about the fire lists. The DNR puts a name to the fire list, so that comes right from the DNR. I did call Mark Piaski. It's really my fault that he's not here tonight. He said, did he have to be here, and there's time to adopt this? So I said, no, if they have questions, we can always bring it back. We can postpone the vote and bring it back. So Mark said, just off the top of his head, he couldn't remember what all the columns were, so he wasn't sure if there's a number associated with a township or not. Maybe Terry or Scott or somebody could to look at Russ's paperwork and just see if anything kind of rings a bell. You can tell it's like a section number, but I can't really tell if like there's a number associated with a township. So Russ, is it okay if Terry just looks at that and maybe she can kind of give you some ideas?
Well, I know our township is Township 19
apologizes, but he said he just couldn't remember the columns off the top of his head.
But there'd be a graph on the top that would explain that. We have, you know, the lines that go across the county are 18s, 19s, and 20s on your ranges, and then these are your townships. Yeah, 18, 19, and then your ranges.
So that all makes sense. So
Yep.
this would be the quarter
Quarter
of the
section.
section.
I don't either. Okay.
So basically, that part of the document is a compilation from the DNR.
And also, Town of Aurora is not with Poisippi ambulance service. They're all with Berlin. And it's not listed on there.
That was Town of Aurora, you said? Okay.
It's not listed at all.
Just a section, it says Berlin, down by City of Berlin, not the whole township.
Okay. Okay. Did you have any other questions or comments? Again, you can certainly postpone this vote a month if you need to. He said that there's time. Okay, all right. Okay. I'll leave that to the Roberts Rules people, how they do that. That supersedes, yeah.
Also move the table.
Then we'll get Mark here.
Yep.
Seconded by Everett. That will be our reorganization meeting.
Correct. So you would like some descriptive column headers, okay? And then the Berlin, was there anything else that anybody noticed? I know it's a very long document, okay? Okay, all right, I will let him know this, and then he'll be at the April meeting.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Resolution number 5-3-16, establishing total annual compensation for county elected officials pursuant to Wisconsin statute, section 59.22.
Motion by Pat King to approve, I assume. Do you have a second? Do you have any questions or comments concerning this? Okay, we need a roll call vote on this.
Mr. Eckstein.
Aye.
Mr. Weddy.
Aye.
Mrs. Paletta.
Aye.
Mr. King.
Aye.
Mr. Waddle.
Aye.
Mr. Rothermel.
Aye.
Mr. Kirschner.
Aye.
Mrs. Krantz.
Aye.
Mr. Heisey.
Aye.
Mr. Trim.
Aye.
Mr. Mastropola.
Aye.
11 ayes. Ordinance, or resolution number 6-3-16, acknowledgement of Bruce Wacholz's service to and retirement from Waushara County Highway Department.
Motion by Eckstein.
Second.
Second by Weddy to approve. Any questions? I did see Mrs. Wacholz at the store, and I asked her if we'd driven her crazy yet, and she said no, but only because she's still working.
The other reason might be the walleyes are running on the Wolf.
That could be it too. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Ordinance number 591, ordinance amending Waushara County Code Chapters 8, 18, 22, and 58.
Approve.
Motion by Bob Waito. Second by Jerry Rothermel. Are there any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
519, the Washera County 20-Year Comprehensive Plan, Washera County, Wisconsin.
So move to approve.
Motion by Barry Mastercola, second by Bernadette Krebs. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Ordinance number 593, ordinance authorizing the establishment of temporary speed limits.
Move to approve.
Motion by Kirschner, second by Weddy. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Ordinance number 594, ordinance amending ordinance number 580, Chapter 2, Article 8, Courthouse Complex Security.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Also move to approve.
Motion by Barry Mastercola.
Second the motion,
Second by
if you pronounce all these words.
I know.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Right, next we have an appointment, and that would be the appointment to Board of Adjustment of John B. Sirik. Okay, I copy the second motion. And you have all the information on John in your packet, and a motion by Kirschner to approve, second by Larry Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next, we have a proclamation recognizing April 11th through the 15th, 2016 as Work Zone Awareness Week. Did you want to talk to us about that, Brian? No? Okay, then we need a motion. Motion by Eckstein. Second by Bernadette. Now, I hope you have some questions for Brian. No questions? Brian will be speaking to Kiwanis in April about work zone safety. I'm sure if you want. I talked him into it. If you want the date that he'll be there, let me know. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, next board meeting is, our organizational meeting, and that's gonna be held on April 19th, 2016 at 9 a.m. I would like to thank Barry Mastercola for filling in, Joe's position. I really appreciate it. I wish I could talk to you into running again, but I tried.
I'd like to personally thank all my fellow members of the board. It's been a pleasure serving with you, not only here but on committees. I learned a lot and I made new friends, which is great. And it's been a privilege, it really has been. And hopefully in the future I can entertain the thought of doing this again. So hopefully if I don't phases are still here. But I thank you all. I appreciate all your support and your help. And like I say, it's been a privilege.
Free beer at your bar, right?
Absolutely.
I have a question for Barry. Is he leaving us to move on to bigger and better things? A third-party candidate, perhaps?
The only parties I'm familiar with, Everett, right now are the ones I hold at the bar.
And please keep me in mind for the golf tournament.
Absolutely. Actually, I'm getting all that put together, so.
Right. Thank you.
If I could, Madam Chair, just
Yes.
one quick announcement. The Wisconsin Counties Association has said that they would like board members to fill out a very short survey at the organizational meeting. So in addition to all the paperwork you'll be getting and having to sign next month, you'll have a really short survey from Wisconsin Counties Association too. Just basic stuff like age ranges and occupations, demographics type stuff. So just so you know that that's coming. And for those of you who have opposition, I'll be posting the election results on our website. So on election night, you can follow along. It'll be under the news item. And unless you want me to call you at midnight to tell you whether you won or not, I'll just let you know the next day, if that's okay.
Good luck to everyone.
Yes, good luck.
Motion by Everett to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Larry
here tonight yet?